Remodeling Science through Creativity, Design, and Communication. That is the title of the lecture that I will be giving today. And it starts like this. 2 weeks ago, I visited Mediation in Copenhagen, where I experienced the award-winning exhibition, Mind the Gut. Through artistic and scientific installations, the exhibition communicates sophisticated scientific knowledge with point of departure in something as intimate as our own bodies, maybe a particular part of our bodies, the gut. The exhibition communicates science in a way that is grounded in everyday experience, in ways that we all have the possibility of relating to, and in the process of doing so, the exhibition not only teaches us something about our bodies, but also actually questions the character of individuality and community by pointing to the rich bacterial flora of our guts and by addressing the still, in many ways, unknown relations between mind and gut, and by pointing out that the intersection between our body and the external world actually resides inside our bodies, in our gut. In the exhibition, transdisciplinary scientific research is unfolded in everyday experience and leads to fundamental questions about the relationship between individual human being and world, between mind and body, and between inside and outside. I stumbled upon a similar point about connections, about how we are connected to the world at another museum visit. Last summer, I was at the Art Museum, Louisiana, in North Zealand, and in the museum shop, I found a wonderful book that I ended up purchasing, a book called Breathe, which includes an essay that points out how we, when we breathe, in principle, are touching each other through microparticles. We are connected to the world through atmosphere, through our breath and our gut. Our bodies are open to the world. When we digest the world. And when we inhale, the insides of our lungs touch the outside world. Our inside is a deep site of connection and mediation. Our inside is a deep site of connection with the outside. Isn't that wonderfully counterintuitive? The exhibition and the book enact connections. They enact something that I think we need to cultivate. Knowledge about connections between human and world. My personal vision is to make connections through mediation, to make connections between human life and our environment, the natural habitat we dwell in, exploring what it means to be human and how this is intertwined with the world as mixtures of nature and culture, as nature cultures. How do we live with nature, ranging from the bacteria in our gut to atmospheric and planetary phenomena? How is life, human life, folded into small and large systems of connection and dynamic exchange? My personal vision is to mediate and make connections, to support the connecting of mind and body, to connect science and society, to connect cognition and emotion, practice and research, past and future. As I have done throughout the past 20 years in writing, journalistic writing, poetry, empirical and ethnographic analysis, and critique, for example, of technology in everyday life. And as I have done in visual work, illustration, graphics, painting, video, and experience design with a focus on space, exhibitions, installations, and performance. My personal vision is to bring together otherwise separate ways of thinking and doing, connecting the arts, science, and technology. Why? Because such transdisciplinary practice is what is needed in a world of challenging systems complexity, bridging various forms of knowing and engaging people in the process of doing so. This is my mission, and it is also what we do in my research center. My unit is called Connie Svabo from the Children's Day in English, Center for Research in Science Education and Communication, a STEM center. We connect disciplines, we connect people, and we connect institutions. We are a collective of people from the disciplines of education, media and communications, mathematics, chemistry, physics, biology, and computer science. We have many projects and collaborations ranging from early childhood to higher education and out-of-school contexts, as well as professional and organizational development, and with external funding from funding bodies such as Nobel Rose Foundation, Freedom Foundation, Nordea Foundation, the EU, North Post, and Technology Partner. A uniting core in much of this activity is the transdisciplinary collaboration between scientists, educators, communicators, and designers. We work with inter and transdisciplinary projects centered on the themes of teacher training and professional development, educational technology and learning materials, science communication and outreach, and STEM education. Teacher training and professional development includes teacher training of pedagogues, primary and lower secondary teachers, education of pre-service teachers, as well as professional development, for example, through professional communities, school leadership, and organization. This also involves educational innovation at larger scale systems levels, as well as on-the-job training and organizational learning. The second column, educational technology and learning materials, includes research and projects on technological mediation of learning. It includes the design of educational communications and technology, and some of the projects and collaborations that we would like to develop in this area include AI and education, and robotics and education, and other kinds of computer-mediated communication and learning. Science communication and outreach includes science and the everyday, working with exhibitions and educational curation, as well as media and popular culture. This is where we work with escape rooms, treasure trails, and immersive installations, as well as other out-of-school environments, such as gardens, museums, and town centers. We design for sensory experience, for thinking, sensing, and feeling, and include spatial and visual forms of communication, as well as narrativity, poetry, and participation in our designs. The fourth column, STEM education, includes pedagogical approaches in which we have expertise. This includes activities in project and problem-based learning, maker pedagogy, and other creative and production-oriented approaches, as well as developing STEM education that leads to deep knowledge in singular disciplines, as well as transversal skills such as communication, creativity, interdisciplinarity, and project work. We already have projects that cover these areas, and looking 5 years ahead, we aim to have a strong portfolio in all of them. We work with practice-oriented projects, and we work with methodological innovation. A key contribution that we plan to make to the field of STEM education and science communication in Denmark is creativity, design, and communication. We work design-based, we work creatively, and we work from an innovative paradigm of interaction and participation in communication. We hold that research should be engaged, co-designing, and co-creating. I'm going to show just a couple of examples of how the value I put on creativity, design, and communication informs what we do in our projects and our practices. Last Step is a project funded by the Remodeling Foundation and led by students with a total of 9 million aged children. The project is carried out in collaboration with researchers and teacher educators from university colleges UCSU and UCSU. Dr. Moskja is the project leader, and I am the director. The project has 2 primary goals. One is to develop a STEM approach to teaching and pedagogy in Denmark. And the second goal is to contribute to professional development for teachers and preschool professionals. An example of how we work with creativity, design, and communication in the project is that we take inspiration from creative communication approaches, such as design thinking, both in our own processes of research. For example, in developing the heuristic of the different roles mathematics can play in STEM activities that we have already presented at conferences and which is forthcoming in a journal article in International Journal of Science and Mathematics Education. These kinds of processes of creative collaboration are well integrated with the way we work in the development of STEM activities for primary and secondary school teachers and pupils. 250 professionals have been involved in our workshops and laboratories, and we are at present pulling a lot of this together in the forthcoming book to be published by students who must teach Poland on STEM approaches to teaching in Denmark. STEM activities is also done through the annual LabSTEM conference, where participants in LabSTEM develop pedagogical installations to present their own work to peers as part of the project's professional development activities. In the LabSTEM project, we work with science communication and education in informal learning environments. This focus is important in the work we do in relation to particularly early childhood education, including preschoolers. For this age group, educators in the LabSTEM project work with daycare and kindergarten activities that have strong tactile, visual, and spatial dimensions. We develop immersive sensory science environments. An example of this from the LabSTEM project is a recent activity where we carried out as a part of Forskningsdøgn, an immersive and sensory science exhibition, which can be seen as a prototype of how I would like to see some of our future activities playing themselves out. This temporary exhibition event had at least 450 visitors on the day and was used for outreach as well as for experience-based STEM engagement for daycare professionals, where institutions could visit the exhibition with children and get inspiration. Parts of the design was also used as mobile sensory kits for inspiration for a recent course of professional development for early childhood education professionals. There are many other examples I could share with you. I shift now, however, to another important aspect of my current work and the work of our center, working cross-institutionally with teacher training and professional development. An important part
of our center's activity is research-based, network, and community building, including cross-faculty collaboration at University of Southern Denmark and cross-institutional collaboration with university colleges and other universities around teacher education and professional development and research. We play key roles in the laboratory for STEM education and learning, where we work with UCL and UCSU on capacity building, research collaboration, and project development. We also play key roles in Naturfagsakademiets Research Center, CISE, where we work with all of the university colleges and 3 other universities, and which is directed by Peter Midler and Martin Silersen. For Naturfagsakademiets Research Center, CISE, we have recently completed a pilot project on professional learning communities in collaboration with Thomas Albrechtsen from UCSU, and we have a follow-up on its way in the form of a large-scale project about knowledge ecologies. The Knowledge Ecology project has a focus on professional development and change at a large-scale systemic perspective and will incorporate methodologies from the design field. For example, in the form of cultural probes, which is a design research technique where materials, media, and artifacts are used as multimodal ways of communicating with research participants. All of these activities are carried out as transdisciplinary collaborations, which are informed by creativity and design, including designing for participation, collaboration, and involvement. The same applies for our internal work here at the university with students and colleagues. We work with the faculty and department leadership and colleagues to support the university's strategic goals of strengthening science, students' competence in creativity, in communication, self-leadership, and interdisciplinarity. We teach and supervise on topics of mathematics teaching, science teaching, oral communications, and project work and project leadership. We are a hub for communication and shared reflection and development in relation to STEM teaching at a university and high school level. This takes place through research seminars, events, and also through co-supervision. We also conduct research projects that focus on and qualify existing outreach and educational activities at SDU, such as doing user studies of teacher and pupil interactions in the B&B escape room, and by contributing to and evaluating projects in citizen science and scientific literacy. And last but not least, we work at a cross-faculty level in Center for Primary and Lower Secondary Education Research, where I am part of the leadership and where we work with faculty colleagues from health and education with a shared focus on developing holistic and systemic approaches to children's lives, and where one project that I am directly involved in explores what goes on in technology-rich classrooms, using video ethnography in a longitudinal study of lower secondary education. This work takes place in the research project Connected Classroom Nordic, which is a part of the Nordic Excellence Research Network, QUINT, Quality in Nordic Teaching, and which involves the collaboration also with university colleges UCL and COPI. This is just a small glimpse into the range of our activities in STEM education, professional development, the development of educational materials, and science communication. If we take a step back, what is it all about? Underpinning the work is a strong orientation towards action and production, towards joint activity towards making and doing together, and towards creativity and design. This has to do with the paradigm that underpins the research, and it is related to do-it-yourself and maker pedagogies, to experiential and aesthetic learning approaches, to fab labs and project and problem-based learning. And it also relates to action learning approaches in adult and organizational contexts, and to networks of action. All of the projects are situated, they are localized and customized, and they take place embedded in action nets, in communities, and indeed in ecologies of practice and research. Underpinning the work is a strong inspiration from the intellectual tradition called science and technology studies. Science and technology studies is an intellectual tradition and a dynamic field of knowledge, which emerged in the early 1980s and is still developing. The tradition is based on empirical studies of the practices of science. That means carefully observing and inquiring into how scientists do science, how science is made, as well as closely observing the making of technology and the processes of technological innovation. Science and technology studies has developed its insights about science through empirical studies, and these studies overwhelmingly show that science is embedded and in many ways also dependent on institutional support, on lab equipment, on funding, on collaborators. Science takes place in networks, in communities. Science and technology studies highlights processes of knowledge production, research, and learning as dynamic, socio-material, emergent, negotiated, mediated, and distributed, as processes, collective processes of shared and contested action. Science and technology studies is a truly interdisciplinary field. And one of the reasons I like it is that it is a great transdisciplinary mixture of people from physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology, and the human and social sciences, such as anthropology, sociology, and philosophy. These profiles of deep subject knowledge and the competence to work across and relate to other ways of knowing can be connected to what we, in some of our center dialogues, refer to as T-shaped profiles. Science and technology studies is an intellectual tradition that can teach us that science is always in the making. Science is contingent, it is historically situated, and it is also deeply intertwined with everyday life, with routines and practices of quite mundane character. I see this highlighting of the emergent and process-oriented aspects of science as an invitation for education to engage and communicate science, not authoritatively, but participatorily. A science and technology studies scholar from whom I take great inspiration is the physicist Andrew Pickering. Andrew Pickering is known and recognized from his work in the early 80s, tracing particle physics as processes of socio-material and scientific investigation. I have found one of his recent books to be fascinating, the book, The Cybernetic Brain, from 2010. The book is a story of British cybernetics, particularly 4 British cyberneticians, Gordon Pass, Gray Walter, Stafford Beer, and Ross Ashby. Pickering shows examples of how cybernetics was based on coming to know through curiosity, through emergent processes of trying out things, thinking through things, literally, materially, tinkering, making, and bricolage, which means to pull something together out of whatever is at hand. To give an idea of the kind of stuff that is explored in the book, I'd like to play a short snippet of video from YouTube.
In a simple villa on the outskirts of Bristol lives Dr. Gray Walter, a neurologist, who makes robots as a hobby. They are small, and he doesn't dress them up to look like men. He calls them tortoises, and so cunningly have their insides been designed that they respond to the stimuli of light and touch in a completely lifelike manner. This model is named Elsie, and she sees out of a photoelectric cell which rotates above her body. When light strikes the cell, driving and steering mechanism sends her hurrying towards it. If she brushes against any object in her path, contacts are operated that turn the steering away, and so automatically she takes avoiding action.
Now, these tortoises, they were made in Gray Walter's garage in his spare time, and they were for leisure and fun. They were also, according to Pickering, an early and clear example of what gets called complexity thinking. In short, something that goes beyond linearity. Pickering accounts for the cybernetic discovery of complexity as a starting point for a new kind of science. And this is a science that does not presume a knowable and cognitively disposable world, but which also works with the world as a multiplicity of exceedingly complex systems, performatively interfering with and open-endedly adapting to one another. Pickering provides a vision of the world as ultimately unknowable. And via cybernetics, he provides a model of engagement consisting of open-ended experimentation. Pickering uses these tortoises to present us with a model for seeking knowledge, which is based on trying on attempts. Modeling science with this kind of inspiration foregrounds the continuous engagement and becoming of research, world, and people. It foregrounds performance. Pickering conjures up a model for making research, which includes movement, participation, practice, and performance. He depicts knowledge creation as what he called ontological theater. He argues that scientific research has this quality, and I quote, of being an emergent and performative dance. I find Pickering's work to add insight to my own writing and works in environmental performance and theater. In particular, the multimedia work, Howell's Castle, and a recent work of video called Environmental Performance von Hutt. I'm talking about open-ended and performative interplays and negotiations between agents and environments. And this is a key in my interest in the tradition of science and technology studies. The model that is provided for the world and how we come to know the world. This model is a dynamic model, non-reductive, interactive, and emergent. Pickering invokes a new way of thinking about the relationship between research and world, and he takes steps towards the implications of this for educational practice, with the key point being that education might embrace what Pickering calls a non-modernist stance, one that takes inspiration from cybernetics in its tinkering, making, and exploratory engagements with things ranging from music systems over robotics to the endeavor of creating a biological computer. With Pickering, we are alerted to research as a trying out of ideas about reality through modeling and explorative experimentation. This leads me to another science and technology scholar whose work I take much inspiration from, and that is Bruno Latour and the concept of mediation. I have for many years been working with mediation, exploring what mediation is, communicating research in various media, indeed exploring the agency proper of the mediator. What is mediation, and what does the mediator do? We know colloquially what a mediator does. A mediator attempts to make people who are involved in a conflict come to an agreement. A mediator is a go-betweener. Mediation is a process of bridging, connecting, relating. We usually think of mediators as people, but with basis in science and technology studies and Latour's work, I've been thinking of things as mediators, looking at how different kinds of media, artifacts, and technologies act as go-betweeners, how they act as mediators. I've used this approach to draw attention to the role of stuff like dress-up costumes, cell phones, and exercise pamphlets as mediating the experience of natural history. And I'd like to share with you now a video from a museum exhibition at Naturama, where a 10-year-old girl is experiencing the exhibition wearing a head-mounted camera that records what she looks at, how she moves, and what she says. During her visit, she engages with a number of mediators, particularly a pamphlet guiding her on an Easter egg hunt.
It's all right. It's like you get practice. You get practice. You know, you struggle. Yeah, we have a. I did it after some very good. I did very good. But it was. Yeah, that person.
Yeah. In the video, we see a mediator in action, an exercise pamphlet guiding a girl and her family towards Easter eggs on their museum visit. The video shows how the girl's attention is in some ways scaffolded, but it's also distributed and negotiated across various forms of media and communication technologies and through interaction with her family members. The girl's experience of natural history takes place through the relating that mediators do, and these mediators at the same time affect the relationship. The concept of mediation is crucial in my work. I've used it to draw attention to the performativity of scholarly forms, such as the genre of the journal article, or indeed the lecture or conference presentations. To mediate is to bridge, to connect, and relate. And in mediation, a remodel, a recreation, and even a distortion or reconstitution also takes place. With a mediation approach, fundamental questions to ask are about the modes of participation. What kind of formatting takes place through and with the chosen medium and form of delivery? How is the content transported? What kind of rhetoric is used? How are people invited to participate? With inspiration from Latour's drawing attention to the agency of mediators, that things have agentic effects. In my work, I explore and foreground the role of mediators. I seek to make mediation apparent and to use it as a creative space for inquiry. An example of this is a recent lunch in our center for colleagues and the NAPA research leadership, served on Petri dishes, tubes, and in other lab equipment. We served food from the SCU canteen, but presented it on lab equipment. The plates and forks and knives we usually eat with are anonymous intermediaries. We don't notice them. But when we aesthetically disturb this lunch situation, it creates a heightened awareness. If we want to fully describe the act and experience of eating, we have to include what the utensils, the plates, and the setting of the table adds to the experience, to the situation. Changing the setup surrounding the meal definitely does something to the consumption of the food. It creates a certain kind of puzzlement or reaction, an aesthetic arousal, and this is key. In the event where we served food off Petri dishes, it created dialogue. We started talking about lab cultures, about which disciplines found it absolutely taboo to eat off a Petri dish, and which disciplines did not. Working with mediation holds the potential for creating heightened awareness and perhaps even interest. Asking questions like, what happens in the communication relationship? How are people invited to participate? What do the mediators do? These questions are relevant to communication situations regardless of what is being communicated. This means they can be asked both in relation to a food event and in the communication of science for education or out-of-school engagement. These questions draw attention to the medium and mode of delivery. This holds great potential. Opening up the black box of mediation holds great potential for communicating science creatively in engaging and participatory ways. How is science remodeled when communicated in a textbook, in a 2D model, in a 3D model, on a YouTube channel, in a spoken delivery, through a lecture, at a science fair, or as an event? When we start unsettling the relationship between content and packaging, between medium and message, and engage with the idea that the mediator shapes the relationship, that the medium may even sometimes be the message, we come to understand that changing the mediation can be seen as a kind of remodeling. When we change the way food is served, this changes the experience of the food. When we change the way science is served, this may change the experience of science. This is the kind of remodeling of science that design, creativity, and communication may offer via science and technology studies. A remodeling via mediation. Science, in many ways, itself is a mediator, a go-betweener. Much science says it deals with nature. Scientists work with understanding or unraveling the secrets of nature. That is, for example, a formulation which is included in our strategy here at the faculty. Science goes between nature and society, and science is a mode of engagement with the world, our habitat. The notion of mediation holds potential for reflecting on the mode of engagement that is possible for science and in science, and certainly the mode of engagement that is possible for pupils and students and teachers in science education. Remodeling science through creativity, design, and communication brings opportunity for connecting through mediating. In light of what I just shared with you, I reiterate that the mission of my professorship and of our research center is to create situations, designs, and environments that support children and young people in connecting with the phenomena that are the topic of research of the sciences, and to do this in ways that are meaningful and engaging. And furthermore, our mission is to empower teachers, professionals, and other communicators in connecting scientific knowledge and everyday life. This includes communicating sophisticated scientific knowledge to audiences in and beyond educational and cultural institutions, as well as communicating research-based knowledge about experiences and perceptions from the everyday, the other way. The center in this way is a mediator with the goal of going between and co-shaping in this process. With the center's activities, I'm proposing a model for the way we work, where creativity, design, and communication are at the core of our activities, and where educational curating, making installations and exhibitions, developing activities, educational technologies, and learning materials goes hand in hand with collaborative, participatory research, with teachers and pedagogues in professional and organizational development for the innovative development of STEM education. The work of the center addresses the needs to develop science education for engagement, interest, and motivation, using creativity, design, and communication as a vehicle for participatory engagements with science. The work of the center addresses the need for what gets called 21st century skills, which includes creativity and communication. The center works to support the teacher graduates develop competencies in teaching STEM, and it works to support that professionals are empowered to communicate their knowledge in inspiring and engaging ways. These activities are supported by design-based, transdisciplinary research and practice, collectively making sense through making, and finding our way collectively in a dynamic and unknowable world. With these words, I'm now open for questions or comments. Thank you.